This is Critical Nonsense, our high-lowbrow show about culture, science, and tech. This week, Joey asks me about changing our personality.
Woo!
Dun, dun, dun. This is what a Joey sounds like. And this is what an executive producer and Huntrix Jess Vander sounds like.
Hi, this is Jess.
Are you a K-pop demon hunter?
Sure. I especially like the idea that I would get my own ramen cup with my name on it as sort of a perk. So if I get a ramen cup with my name on it, I'm totally in.
I mean, that's all it takes. Now we know. Now we know.
It. Yeah, it's like demons. You want them gone? I've just got one price, and that's a personalized cup of instant noodles.
I mean, Emerson has been so into it, and
I get it. It's just that good.
Those songs are earwigs. My
really
God,
they're just can't get them out.
I woke up. I think I had heard one of the songs one time, and I woke up with it in my head, and I was like, "What is happening?"
Yeah. Can we also just celebrate EJ for being both songwriter and voice of Rumi, the singing voice of main character Rumi? Oh, wow.
I mean, Aaron's going to be so upset that we even brought this up on an episode that he's not on.
You're right.
Because he would go off right now.
That's true.
Jessica.
Yeah.
Personality.
Okay.
What is that?
I don't know.
I've seen a few things recently disconnected, and of course in the way that we do things, and I'm looking for the red threads. So I saw an article, a journal article, talking about, it was in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology.
A casual
126.
Read.
Yeah. And it's called Most People's Life Satisfaction Matches Their Personality Traits. True Correlations in Multi-Trait, Multi-Rater, Multi-Sample Data. The net takeaway of this is personality traits are highly correlated with people's sense of life satisfaction. Like the idea of respecting authority, working on improving myself, am extremely loyal person, believe one has special duties to one's family, like to visit new places. Those are some of the top correlated personality traits with positive, those are positive, but on the lower end, things like I'm good at many things, I'm usually active and full of energy, I rarely complain, I have a lot of fun. Those ideas are highly correlated with being high on life satisfaction. Ones that are tops for negatively correlated are often feel that others misunderstand me, find that nothing excites me, postpone decisions, hate to hear about the successes of others. Things like this are negatively correlated with life satisfaction. I also saw someone, in the annals of amateur cultural anthropology, I guess, someone said, as a waitress, I'm having brief in real life interactions with 50 to 100 people per day, and an observation has emerged. About 90% of people have negative, sad aura. The happy individuals stand out as they are rare. And I've been thinking about this question of how, the traditional idea of personality is that it is ingrained or not changeable or doesn't evolve over time. And I think, there's a lot of science and social psychology, personality psychology, clinical psychology studies about that idea. But I don't know how much people actually set out to try to change their personality, right? Like the idea that, there's a bit of potentially a self-fulfilling prophecy in there of personality can't change. This is what I'm working with. This is me, you know. And so my question to you is, how much do you think you can change your personality?
Well, so many things here. Maybe the first is this question of like what makes up a personality. Like, you know, you are what you eat. It's sort of like the behavioral element, or the, you know, you are the things you do. Like behavior is like one piece of it. And I feel like a lot of that maybe is where the changeability seems almost the highest to me. But I think the other two things, and this is where it becomes increasingly out of one's control, is one's psychology and one's nature. Like, one's psychology could be affected by a whole host of environmental factors, societal factors, things that you grew up with, traumas you've experienced, cultural hurdles that are unfair but foisted upon you. And then what about the stuff you're born with? Your nature, your character, things that feel immutable, are immutable, soul such associations, I guess, of just like one's self. And I feel like personality floats across these things where it's like, what is the source of one's personality at any given time? Like personality, in my mind, should be something that is more constant. Right? And maybe that's why when talked about, it's harder to describe it as something that is changeable, because otherwise you'd be talking about how someone acted, how someone behaved. You wouldn't be using personality. Even when we do brand work, we talk about personality as, you know, what are the traits that are core to somebody's identity for a reason. It's like, regardless of whatever circumstance you find yourself in, or what, you know, whether you're playing basketball or hosting a formal party, you know, are you changing? This, in fact, recently came up on a project where I was like, Obama hanging out with his buddies versus Obama at a press dinner or something, like still Obama, right? Just Obama in different moments. So I don't know. I guess like it is an interesting question. But in my mind, part of this stems from the idea that personality is not the same as behavior. It is tethered to your psychology and your nature.
Yeah, I mean, it is. There's sort of like a potentially a philosophical component to this, right? Or, you know, in the ways of like, what does an empiricist say versus a philosopher say, and how do they study a question? And you know, right, an empiricist is going to like look at, you know, a self-report questionnaire and cut T-scores out of it and things like that. And you know, they would also look at behaviors. I think like a philosopher is going to look at it more in terms of what is driving you as a person. I think, you know, the self-report version of things is like, where does a predilection exist? You know, a lot of the tests can be structured in like true or false. I like this, or I don't like that. I like this, or I don't like that. Or, you know, like some Likert scale of like on 1 to 5, from strongly disagree to strongly agree. I have a lot of fun in my life, right? To use one of those traits that was in this particular study. And that like self-report is like the narrative self, right? Like the version of yourself that you see as you string things together, versus the experiential self of like, what are the behaviors and the day-to-day interactions that you have. I think that idea of you have at any given point some sort of predilection, some drive, some orientation towards liking or disliking things makes sense, right? Like what is sort of the basal state of you as an organism, as an individual. But there are so many books, stories, videos, you know, anecdata around how people change their behaviors, right? Like that idea of I have become, through choice and work and pushing more oriented towards X, Y, or Z thing. I previously had this orientation, but now I have a new orientation towards things. And how does that change? And the reason I'm sort of asking that question is if you can see that people have a higher life satisfaction based on, these ideas of like, I like to have fun. I'm a loyal person. I, excite in other people's successes. Like those things, to me, at least on their face, feel like things you could change about yourself if you were trying to pursue more life satisfaction. This idea of like happiness, right? Or like it's always been such an airy idea, and we sort of it's like a concept that is a little bit harder to pin down, but like satisfaction feels easier to pin down to me. And like,
Okay, here's my opinion. I think the more I'm hearing you talk about this, the more that I could see a world and have witnessed firsthand someone's surface level personality undergoing a significant and lasting shift, and attached to the corollary of, I don't believe that typically is entirely up to one's own agency or control. So actually, I think probably one of the best examples that I'm trying to think of now relates to, the idea of nominative determinism, which is a fancy way of saying your name affects your personality. And it's a hypothesis of like somebody, in where I grew up, the guy
Chad's gonna Chad.
The guy who pulled wisdom teeth was it was like Dr. Yank, Dr. Wank, something like that. It was like destined to be that interview with the firefighter who's gosh, I'll put it in the show notes. They're just like plenty of examples of how people find a profession that happens to align really closely with their name, or certain personality traits or interests tying to their name, and why that happens. And names are like, even in the context of people choosing their name, say letting go of dead names as they transition and sort of come out as people come out as trans, and claiming one's own new name. Like that idea is interesting, as it is sort of embracing with it one's, chosen and true self that they want to externalize to the world. Like that feels like agency to a degree, but also usually is following a series of, significant, like either, personal hurdles that you've had to triumph over, or environmental circumstances where you've got to leave your hometown and find your chosen family in order to feel like you can actually embrace this part of yourself. And maybe the only reason that, someone seems to be, an Eeyore type personality is because consistently they are facing certain types of environmental factors or certain types of challenges that mean that, sure, the predominant trait that everyone is seeing might be this thing, but that might not actually be reflective of one sort of true self, true personality, or the way those different traits would sort of calibrate themselves in a different context. And so I guess all of that to me says, maybe there's actually plenty of room to change our personality, but how easy it is to do that calibration depends so much on circumstance.
Yeah, definitively. Right. Like that nature nurture question, right? Like often, they're doing like, I know the acronym and don't even know what it, like GWAS studies, and these like twin studies and different types of things that they're trying to like analyze what components of either achievement, capability, like certain outcomes are tied to genetics or environment. And, like so often they're coming back as like 50-50.
Right, but I think the piece of this that's kind of different is like, if personality is something that feels more lasting, is there actually a piece of it that's just like a thing? Personality is just representative of a consistent environmental context or circumstantial context of like, it's not that I'm just a mean person, it's that the circumstances are making me mean every day.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds sort of right. Like personality is emergent of an individual and a set of genetics and an environment with which that, right? Like if you are a set of potential outcomes, right? As a individual, your environment is going to express those outcomes depending on what it is. And, I often think about, when am I there are situations or circumstances where I feel like my personality emerges in a way that I don't like. And so I either avoid those situations or circumstances because I don't like that. Not anything bad. It's just, certain times when I'm at home with my first family, like the family I grew up with, like my siblings and my parents, like I get pushed into this older brother mode, and I'm like, I don't want to do this. You're all grown ups. Like, I don't want to have to be that thing. And I'm like, I don't like this version of myself that I have to be in this situation. And so I don't avoid my family, but like, I think it is like a demonstration where a different environment, different context sort of produces a thing. Or, when I'm in places with huge crowds, I sort of like pull in a little bit. I don't really have like a ton of stress, but I'm like, I don't feel like I can be myself in that environment. And so then I avoid those circumstances because my set of things. But it is, even in that, right? Like the idea of like being able to change your personality, the ways in which you can sort of find to express more of these traits maybe is about choosing to change your environment, whether that is like a job, a relationship, friendships, like your home, the city you live in, like what all of those things are sort of like a set of factors that are, you are pushing your organism, your person through these environments on a consistent basis. And if you're not liking sort of the outcomes that are emerging from it, the choice then becomes, which of these environments do you change? Is the part of yourself that you don't like coming from a romantic relationship? Is it coming from a job? Is it coming from like your home is feeling like it's not allowing you to sort of move through life in the ways that you want to move through life? Are your friendships not like giving life, giving energy, things like that?
Well, and to me, that's why it feels like it is so much more common. I don't know. I can just imagine that it is so much more common that people are aware of that, of not wanting, or of certain traits being brought out in them, of being a version of themselves that they don't like as much, is way easier to recognize than it is to change, because sometimes you can't. And it's not for lack of will. It might be for like genuinely dangerous situations. It might be for fear of being excommunicated or cut out from community. There are so many different reasons that it's easier to recognize, this doesn't feel right for me, but I can't do anything about it. And so I also want to be careful to say, like, maybe it could be that your personality could be different if change were possible, but how fair it is and realistic it is that for many that isn't the case.
Well, it's a question of cost, right? Like, and not always financial cost. Like I have a cousin, like third cousin, but it was like play cousin, grew up down the hill from me, in like the weird French Canadian community where somehow you're like, oh, we're cousins? We didn't know that. But he had like like he got kicked out of middle school for a year and was sort of went sideways, and at some point like extracted himself from the, like in his 20s, and extracted himself from the environment, created separation from family and community, and has like rebuilt his life and is like very successful from like a point where he was sort of like swirling and swooning, and like where he is today versus where he was 15 years ago is like not an obvious trajectory by any, he would say, as much. And I think that question of like, there will be a, right, like if you feel the environment and the city that you're in is the problem, then like moving somewhere else and extracting yourself from a community and having to build a new community, or being further from family, or those types, that's like a legitimate real cost to require to like make some significant change. It takes time, takes work, takes all of these other things, like financial implications, all of that. But that question of like, I think part of why I'm asking this is I do hear things from people like, that's just who I am. That's how, like, right. There has been this idea that your personality is static and will not change. And there are certainly studies that do that. But I think what I'm almost more interested in the way that like Martin Seligman, the father of positive psychology, was like, we all study disorder. And he was a self-identified like curmudgeon and like unhappy person. And he's like, what are the healthy people like? And so just started studying people who are like happy and satisfied, because he felt like no one was. And he identifies as like having changed his personality. He's like, I'm not a glowing person now, but I'm a much happier, healthier person from like studying this. And so that question of not, do most people's personalities stay static? Maybe because we don't approach things in this way of sort of making a willful and costly, potentially like expensive, like immediate risk and cost for long-term reward and satisfaction. And I don't think I've thought about it that way historically, because those ideas exist in culture and science and all of this, that like, you are who you are, but you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Like all of these things are so fatalistic in orientation as we think about ideas like personality, that I don't know. I'm sort of like, and maybe it's just the hopeless optimist in me being like, maybe not,
Yeah, I get it. I think the idea that for some people, it might actually be useful to have a perspective shift of like, actually, if you don't like this and you're willing to pay whatever and the costs are affordable to you, like, hey, have you considered trying beach living, or like I don't know, doing something else? Even if you don't know that that's the right thing, just to see how that could change things. I guess to me, I'm just like, the idea of like, are you willing to, to sort of pony up to pay whatever cost it is? I think I just get, to me, the adage of why we might assume that, you like more personality is constant is it, because for many, those circumstances are impossibly costly or potentially dangerous. And so it's like, it's more like how many people have sort of self-inflicted perceived barriers and hurdles, and actually like it might just be fine, or maybe it will come at some cost, but ultimately be, make you happier and be better for you. I just don't know how many people actually have that opportunity.
I mean, I think I understand, like, right, in this like idea of like total life transformation things, right? Like who has that, and there are systemic issues. And also I think everybody probably has smaller decisions and things that, aren't like complete life transformations, but don't sort of view things in this way, that like I have the ability to change this thing if I wanted, right? And sometimes it can be like things like like loneliness or those ideas, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a cost to transform loneliness, and it means the work and discomfort of approaching and building new friendships, which we've like talked about many times in the past.
Right. And or like other potential biases at play, like the ownership effect of like, well, this is what I have, and so this is what is good and best. Even if it would be painful to extract and impossible to say ahead of time, but actually it would be preferable. You just have no idea.
Yeah. I spoke to someone at a conference that I was speaking at, and it was in like the speaker pre area, right? Like where you could go and they'd be like, wait here and we'll come get you and we'll bring you backstage and whatever.
Green room?
It was like a green room.
It's more of a
type
hallway
of thing
for meeting.
No, it was like a VIP area, because some people could pay to have, like there was a buffet and things like that. And a guy came up to me and was like, he just started talking to me, and I talked to him for a little while. And he basically said like, I'm breaking into the world. I don't know anyone, and it is not my, not exactly these words, but like, it's not my predilection to like talk to people. So I'm trying to do that. And like, to me, that is an example. And he was like a little bit socially awkward, but was trying to figure this thing out, and was like, had set in his mind, I'm going to do this thing that I don't do at this place. And I saw him not just talk to me, to talk to some other people. And that's like a hard thing to do. Like
it's like my worst nightmare. Oh my goodness, I can't do that.
Yeah. Like I'm happy to talk to people, but I don't go up and like talk to random people at that type of situation. And so I was just like, oh, this is an example of him trying to change his personality and comfort in a thing that he was saying. He could have been like, I'm not a people talker at events, but he chose to change it. So
yeah.
Jess, can you wrap us up in a personality corner?
Yeah. I am not a person who runs, but I've been running for 2 years. So am I a person who runs?
You are.
This is the question. That is all I have to say. Who are we? Are we just being ourselves, and that makes us be ourselves?
Magical meat sacks floating through space.
Gross. No.
Critical Nonsense is a Sylvain production.
Brought to you by words like happy and fun and cool.
As always, we'd like to thank our executive producer and magical meat sack, Jess Vander.
No, thank you. We'd like to thank our sound engineer and our Obama, Alex Guntel.
We'd like to thank our programming coordinator and emergent property, Les Jacobs.
And thanks to our production crew and constant environmental shapeshifters, Sarah Gilbert, Nora Mestrich, Christy Jensen, Amanda Medina, and Amy Waters.
And as always, thanks, Ellen.
Thanks.
Special thanks, Dungeon Crawler Carl. I've said it once, I'll say it again. I'm still thanking. Gratitude.
I'd like to thank doing our best. Doing our best. That's it.
Well, I think that's the place to end it. That's just like, we're all just doing our best. Gratitude.
I think we're all just doing our best. Is that me? I don't know, but at least it's trying.
Well, love you, mean it, bye.
Am I? Okay, bye. All right. We're live.
Critical Nonsense is a Sylvain Labs. Nope, it's not. It's a Sylvain production.
Nope.
I'll start over.